Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mike Lenz VO podcast. My name is Mike Lenz. I'm an entrepreneur and a full-time professional voice actor and audiobook narrator. My goal is to share with you stories from some of the most amazing and inspiring people from all areas of the voiceover industry to help you achieve your dream of becoming a professional voice actor. So please leave me a review over on iTunes and join us over on the web at mikelenzvopodcast.com to be notified of each episode when it comes out. Now, get ready to be inspired. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mike Lenz VO podcast. Now, before we jump into the show, I want to share some great discounts from Voice 123 and the LinkedIn Edge. In the show notes, I'll have a link for a 15% discount on a new Voice 123 membership at the $395 level and up. I have an affiliate partnership with them to provide this amazing discount to my podcast listeners. So check the show notes for the special discount link. And I've said many times how important social media marketing is to finding success in the VO industry. And that's why I also have an affiliate partnership with my good friend Tracy Lindley to provide a $50 discount on her LinkedIn Edge course. Now, I've been following Tracy's LinkedIn plan for years, and it really has helped me connect with clients who hire me. So take advantage of this discount by clicking on the link in the show notes that will take you to an ordering page with the $50 discount already applied to the price. So both of those discounts can be found in the show notes, so check them out. Today's episode is sponsored by VoiceAm and the Audition Ready online course. Head over to mikelenzvopodcast.com and click on the VoiceAm sponsor link to receive a 30-day free trial of VoiceAm. That's twice as long as the usual 15-day free trial period, so take advantage of that. I love VoiceAm. I use it on my website. It's a fantastic marketing tool in addition to being a great demo player, so check it out for free. Also, click on the Audition Ready online course link and enter promo code ML20, that's ML20, to receive 20% off Tim Tippett's Audition Ready online course. Tim is amazingly gifted at cutting through the complicated tech side of VO and making it easy to understand. He's helped me tremendously in my career, and I know he can help you too. And you can find both of those offers at mikelenzvopodcast.com. All right, so on today's episode, my guest is Paige Reisenfeld. Paige is based in Richmond, Virginia. She is a classically trained soprano and stage actor turned SAG-AFTRA audiobook narrator. Paige, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mike. It is a pleasure and like a full circle meeting of being here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I was thrilled when you kind of told me that story, and I know you're going to share it with the audience, but Paige and I found Paige on TikTok. We got to be TikTok friends when I joined TikTok about a year ago, and I love her content, so check her out over on TikTok. And come to find out, we have some other kind of relation going on here in terms of how long she's known about me and about the podcast. So with that, Paige, why don't you share with our listeners about your journey into not only voiceovers, but in particular audiobooks?
Yeah. So, I was always into like animation and that kind of stuff, but it was never when I was growing up, it wasn't as like achievable. I'm aging myself. I went to anime conventions, but they never had like the dubbing stuff like competitions that they have now, which is really cool. But then I kind of got sidetracked. I went to school for, like I said, classical voice, did a little bit of stage acting, and then, the pandemic hit us and there was no more
Mm.
stage acting. So, I was actually working in the Amazon warehouse packing boxes to make ends meet. And in order to get through that, I had started listening to podcasts. What was it? My Favorite Murder, all 300 episodes I did to get me through during the Christmas season. And then I was like, I'm tired of podcasts. I'm going to listen to audiobooks. And so I was listening to audiobooks and I went up to visit my dad and we were talking about audiobooks and he was listening to Helldivers narrated by R.C. Bray, which I think was included in the Audible catalog at the time, but I was also listening to the same book at the same time. So it was just one of those weird coincidences. And then we got to talking about voices and why he loves R.C. Bray, and then he stopped and looked at me. He said, "You know, I think you would make a great audiobook narrator. Like, you have a great voice for that." And I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that, but I love to read." one of my, like, checkmark achievements is I was awarded best reader in kindergarten.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I wish I still had the ribbon to put in my booth, but, so I just started doing research, and I looked up podcasts to learn about it because it's kind of hard to dig through all of the information, and I found Mike Lenz's VO podcast, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna listen to this."
Yay.
We've got a bunch of different, people from different parts of the VO industry, and I started at the beginning because I'm a Capricorn, and if it started in 2017, in 2021, I needed to know about it. Um, and so I ended up I listened for a while, and then finally, it was after I listened to Heather Costa and Jeff Kafer, and I was like, "You know what? I'm going to reach out to Jeff Kafer about narration because he offers, like, little 10-minute sample where he'll listen to you read."
Mhm.
And I did that, and he was like, "Yeah, I think you've got the chops." So I dove all in, but yeah, so thank you, Mike. I found your podcast, and you're basically the reason I went for it, was like, "I can do this."
That's an awesome story, and we were talking about it at APEC, which we'll talk about in a little while, but that's the Audiobook Publishers Association conference that we both attended recently. But when you told me about Jeffrey, that I remember that that interview with him because when I interviewed him way back when, he was one of the early guests.
Mhm.
And I was very, very early in my audiobook career as well. And so thinking back to that time in my career, that was I was in a somewhat similar situation because I was working in the pharmacy that I owned, but I really wanted to get into VO into audiobooks, and I just didn't know how. So I thought, well, I know Jeffrey Kafer had kind of gotten downsized out of his job in 2008 during the recession, and that's what led him into audiobooks. And I'm like, he's got a great story to tell, and I might learn something from him. So I'm gonna get him on the podcast so I can kind of pick his brains for half an hour. And it was just a great interview, and he was very, he was very helpful and just in terms of giving advice. So I know he's a great guy, and I've gotten to know him over the years, but I imagine your experience of kind of working with him a little bit one-on-one was probably pretty enlightening and I imagine extremely helpful.
It was, and, like, when I listened past him, but the reason I kept coming back to him was I was like, he seems like the type who's not going to BS me."
No.
Like, if s which I need that in my life. So I'm like, "Please don't lie to me," and I got the vibe that he wasn't there to, I don't know the word I'm looking for is, but he wasn't going to lie to me, basically,
Yeah.
that he was going to be legit. If he didn't think I could do it, then he would tell me, and I would think about something else, but I wound up coaching with him for his, I think it was, like, 6 weeks, and then doing my demos with him, etcetera, and then he sent me out into the audition world, and here I am.
Into the world. So how has it been so far for you? So you've been doing this now how many years?
My very first audiobook was published on October 4th, 2021.
Wow, so you're
So,
a couple of years then.
yeah, a year and a
Not
half. We're
yeah,
approaching
not
that.
even.
Yeah, yeah. So I coached with him in June, July of 2021.
So how has the experience been for you? So I'm certain there's been some obstacles that have must have popped up in terms of just getting your foot in the door in the audiobook world because look, we both know the audiobook world is not a bad place to be in terms of supply and demand because there's a lot of audiobooks out there and that need narrators.
Mhm.
But the flip side is also that has always been competitive and has gotten even more competitive, I believe, since the pandemic
Oh,
that
definitely.
there's a lot more people who are like, hey, I think I want to do that. So, what are some of the obstacles that you've encountered, some of the hurdles you've had to overcome in this phase of your career?
Well, definitely environmental noise. I live in a very loud neighborhood, and when I first started recording, I had, the makeshift booth. We live in a house that was built in 1910, so, like, the insulation is non-existent, and the middle room that was furthest away from the front door is over a crawl space, so a lot of vibrations coming up through there, plus I have 3 cats, so the PVC pipe frame with the sound blankets was not
Not cutting
doing
it.
much for me. I did do my very first book in that booth, and, it took me I got it in July of 2021, so I was still in, training with Jeff, um, and it was one of the auditions I just sent out, and I didn't complete it until the end of September, and it was supposed to be an 11-hour book. I think it came out to 9.5 because, when you start out, you talk a little fast.
Hmm.
But also I was editing it myself, and I mean, that in and of itself is a huge hurdle. Is we don't have a nest egg to send out to an engineer, so you have to figure out how to do it, which I did through my training or whatever. But, doing that with cats who want to destroy your feet and want to be in there with you and making noise and outdoor, that was a huge hurdle. Um, I got a booth after that because I was like, I can't do this anymore, so we're just gonna make the investment leap." Because at that point, I had auditioned for things and I had stuff in the queue to do.
Hmm.
Um, and one was a 40-hour audiobook, and I was like, "I can't do that in this little thing." So,
Wow.
um, and yeah, I mean, other than that, in terms of, well, like you said, it's supply and demand, so it's much more competitive. So trying to figure out what to audition for, what can I afford to audition for, figuring out whether or not doing a royalty share is lucrative versus not doing anything and maybe working more retail. Just trying to make that cost analysis was very, very difficult. Um, and there was definitely a short span where suddenly I didn't have anything, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" But you mentioned TikTok earlier, and actually, one of my authors was like, "You need to get on TikTok," and I was like, I'm 37. I don't belong on TikTok. That's not for me." And she was like, "Paige, I'm 41. Get on TikTok. There's a community called Book Talk, and I think you'll find work." And I was like, "Okay, Jen." So I did, and, she was right. I have not had to. I say had to, I still do audition, but I have not had to audition in about a year for work.
Hmm. I saw somebody at APAC, and she was saying that all of her work comes from TikTok.
Mhm. I believe that. All of mine has in the past year. Like, there have been a couple I've thrown up onto ACX, but yeah, that and then Instagram, like, I see casting announcements on Instagram for, John Marshall Media and such, but most of my work, if not all of it, I think has come from TikTok.
Yeah, and I remember you posted something, it might have been on TikTok or maybe Instagram when you were it was either before you got your booth or maybe right around the same time. Were you doing something with the windows? Were you trying to, like, seal up windows?
Oh, yes.
Do I remember that correctly?
Yep, yep, so again, house is built in 1910. Even though they added stuff on, they did it in, like, the most cost-effective way, and by that I mean very, very cheaply. So our back room, which is, about 60 feet from the road, has 3 windows that were facing our little city backyard, and again, just the noise and the bass and the really big engines were just coming in, so we got 3 panels of drywall, mass-loaded vinyl, the 200-pound, and then we drilled them over our windows. So we don't have windows out to the backyard anymore. Can't see out
That's
of it.
okay.
It's just, 3 panels of drywall and mass-loaded vinyl.
It is functional, though. That's the main thing. It works.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly.
I
It's not
remember
pretty
doing
to look
my
at, but
No, it doesn't have to be. I did my first, audiobook with, a three-sided poster board from our daughter's, project she had done previously and just duct taped it to the wall and got Walmart foam and put it up there. I think I did my first 5 audiobooks with that
nice.
as my acoustic treatment. So, we all doesn't really matter what it looks like. It only matters what it sounds like
Right,
in
we
the
we all
VO
start
world.
somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. So, we do what we can with what we have, basically,
Absolutely.
and that's the name of the game. Um, I'm going to take a very short break for a word from our sponsor, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about APAC. We're going to talk about your stage acting and your accents that you do as well, because I saw that
Yay.
on your website. So, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back in about 2 minutes.
Bob Merkel here with a special offer for VoiceAm. Sign up for VoiceAm using promo code MikeLens and you'll get a 30-day free trial. VoiceAm's player is easy to customize and embed. Your buyers can play full demos or just the reads inside. Plus, both are downloadable, and you'll be presenting demos like a pro. Our players are designed to keep buyers listening, and that means you're getting heard and getting hired. Join the ZAM fam now and be sure to use the promo code MikeLens.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. I am here with Paige Reisenfeld. We've been talking about her journey into the audiobook world and, some of the obstacles that she's had to overcome, which are not uncommon, I think, to a lot of people that are trying to get into this industry, is trying to make sure that you've got the right recording space, because especially if you're doing work on platforms like ACX, where you have to fully produce that, that's a much, much bigger lift than if you're working with a publisher who is going to take those raw files and going to edit them themselves. So you've got to do all the editing and all the whole processing yourself. Well, how has that been for you in terms of, I know when I did my first book, that it was a 13-hour book and it was just a monster for me because I just didn't have that editing experience. How has that been for you as you've kind of gotten your career started?
Well, the nice part about the training that I signed up is they actually had, like, training. So I use Reaper, because it's non-destructive, and they had a training course on that. And, I forget the gentleman who conducted that, and I feel so bad because he was wonderful, but he had, like, a PDF with spreadsheet and, like, shortcuts he set up to help take out blips, and, like, just setting up, like, a mastering chain and fiddling with that. So I have it, like, down, but I can say it's not my favorite thing because, like, the 3rd book I ended up doing, um, it was 35 hours, and, it was
My
also
goodness.
it was also duet with my partner who also narrates.
Wow.
Um, so my first duet, my first, really, really, really long book and only my 3rd audiobook ever, um, it gave me carpal tunnel and, like, tendinitis, and luckily, I was able to start outsourcing my editing about 4 or 5 months later. So and I have not looked back. I'm like, I appreciate I know how to do it. I can do it for auditions or, like, little novellas, but other than that, I just try not to mess with it. But it's definitely a learning curve and also to figure out what your mastering chain needs.
Yeah, definitely. And I know most people that start out, me included, will do the editing themselves. And I don't think in and of itself it's a bad thing, because it does
Mm-mm,
teach you how to do the things that you need to do just in case you have to do it.
absolutely.
But I know Jeffrey has said this to you, because I know he said it to me, and we talked about it at the conference when I saw him, is that he's like, hey, your job is to be a narrator.
Mhm.
And in terms of bang for your buck, dollars in your pocket, you're much, much better off, as long as you can afford to do it, to have somebody do the editing and proofing and editing for you, because then you can move on to your next book. And that's
Absolutely.
that's your job as narrator. And there are professionals who are very good at what they do, who are such a big part of what we do as narrators, are the people that proof and edit and master those files for us. And those people are worth their weight in gold, because they're a significant part of the success of a book. So I'm glad to hear that you're outsourcing it now, because ultimately I think that's where we absolutely have to be.
Agreed, 100%, and they are worth pots and pots of gold, like,
I know.
yeah, they're just
I love
wonderful.
my editors and my proofers.
Yes. Like, I have a
Love them.
list.
I know, exactly. So I know you've done stage acting, so that obviously must help you in your audiobook performance. What type of genres are you primarily doing now, and how has the stage acting helped you?
Um, so that's interesting because I never actually did any formal stage acting training. I was a classical vocalist, and, like, I acted in high school, but I did classical voice, and then I met my partner actually singing at, a church, and he was like, "Have you ever thought about doing, like, musical theater?" And I was like, "I mean, like, I grew up on it, but not since, like, I graduated." And he was like, I work at a touring children's theater company that does musicals and such." And I was like, "Interesting." So I auditioned and I got accepted. So I ended up touring children's theater, doing some. I've done a few like main stage adult shows, but that was never really anything I trained in. So it was really
Mm,
weird to do that. I mean, obviously, you learn stuff from being on stage, a lot of, I don't want to say improv, but how to respond
mhm.
to people, and I will say I think that helps in, like, the romance genre when you have to do duets, and maybe you don't know what your partner sounds like, and you have to come up with these conversations based on a character or how you think the conversation would sound, and it's a very
Right.
fun kind of call and response without the call.
Right, right. You don't have anybody to play off of,
Right.
if you're just doing your lines cold without that other person there.
Mhm. So it's interesting to I guess I think the stage acting kind of helped with that because when you've worked with so many different people on stage, you can kind of, I don't know, mush together the conversation in your head pretty easily or quickly. I shouldn't say it's easy.
Yeah, I know I haven't done any real stage acting other than a musical when I was in college, but I also did do a stage reading that I was involved in, and I can tell you the experience I had with that was just I mean, I'd never really had an experience like that where I fully committed to my character in just a stage reading with the script in front of us, not the actual production. And it was a very emotional scene, and the woman who was playing with me at that time, we were on in that particular scene together. Um, she started to cry and like actually cry, and then I got emotional. I got choked up because I'm like, oh, she's going for it. She's actually like really committing to this role, and that gave me the energy to commit fully to my role. And it's kind of an out of body experience, at least it was for me, when you sort of take on the persona of the character that you're playing, and the other person that you're acting in that scene with is doing the same thing. It's like, whoa, it was mind blowing. Mind
Mhm.
blowing.
There's definitely a magic to that, and it could be different every time you do it, which is the amazing thing about, like, stage work, is you never know how they're gonna deliver it, and that may change how you deliver it, and you get to play with that when you're narrating audiobooks, and if I don't like it, I can do it again. So
Exactly. We get to hit pause, hit that space bar, and start over again,
Mhm.
which is awesome to have that ability. Um, Now you do some accents too.
I do a few, yeah. It's one of
Yeah,
my
more than more
passions.
more than a few, more than a few on your website. Holy smokes! So I was like, what? So you're obviously fluent in English, trained in Russian, can read what is it?
Cyrillic.
Cyrillic?
I have a Russian minor from my first time through college.
So German, Italian, French, Spanish, American, Spanish, Castellano, Japanese, and Latin.
Mm.
That's it?
That's it. I'm working on Croatian right now, but those are languages I trained in, though. Like, I had Japanese in high school, I had a Russian language minor, Spanish, Castellano, and Espanol, French, German, Italian, Latin. I had to train in all of those for my voice degree. And I also had to learn, like, the International Phonetic Alphabet, but having those, the Romance languages and, Germanic-based languages and the Cyrillic and Slavic helps learn other accents. Um, so, like, right now I'm working on Croatian for a book that I'm doing because it is slightly different than Russian, and I am that
Wow.
person who's, like, OCD about trying to make sure it's correct and not a caricature because I never ever want to be a caricature.
Yeah, and even the accents on your website, so Irish, Scottish, Italian, German, French, Russian, English, RP, Cockney, New York, Midwest, Southern. So, the more as voice actors and audiobook narrators, the more accents we can perfect's probably not the right word, but become proficient in,
Mhm.
the better off we're going to be, because that will open up more opportunities for us to do different types of work. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and they're proficient is probably the better word, because I had PJ Oakland on, who was a guest, and
Ah,
he's like the dialect doctor, I think, and
yes, he's
he can do
amazing.
all kinds of crazy, different accents. But again, it's learnable. It's learnable. Everything is figure outable. But in my experience, I haven't really had to go into that world, other than being somewhat proficient in a few different accents, but not perfect.
Right, I wouldn't say that I would be able to narrate a full audiobook in all of those, like, dialogue, definitely, and some are better than others. Like, I was hired by a British company over British narrators on ACX to do a book in RP, which, I loved doing that. And then I've done a few. I'm getting hired a lot for Georgia, ironically enough, which I
Hmm.
never thought that was a thing, but that's a thing. So now that one, like, yes, I can narrate a full book in that, but I would never ever presume to narrate a book in Irish because mine is just not that good. Maybe one day, but today is not that day.
Today's not that day. Right, right, right.
No, no.
But you'll get there. You'll get there for
I hope
sure.
so, I hope so.
Yeah, and I've had to do a couple of books where they have had whatever accent it was that I had to get good enough at it so that I could pull it off. But no way was I going to be able to do an entire book in that accent. If I could
Mm,
do a character who had a number of lines and be able to hit the right phrases, and the right accent, then I was very happy with that. But
mhm.
yeah, there's a difference between being able to do it a little bit in a book versus doing a whole book in that accent. So
Definitely.
we've all been there. So let's talk a little bit about APAC, which I mentioned earlier is the Audiobook Publishers Association Conference. It's an annual conference that they have, and the last one before COVID was in 2019, and that was the first one that I went to. And then they haven't had one in person until this year. And you and I got to see each other, which was wonderful at APAC. What was your experience?
It was amazing. It was very overwhelming, especially for, introverts who prefer being in a small box by themselves. But, it was just a wonderful, accepting place to be. I got to meet so many people who I only knew through, the little boxes of social media and actually
Hmm.
see them and meet them in person. My roommate was someone who I met on TikTok basically a year ago. I picked her up on the way. We drove up and back together. Um, and then the panels were just super informative, and I loved how they had, like, a production track and a business track, and you could choose which ones that you wanted to go to. Because even if you aren't doing, like, the business side, they're so informative as a narrator because they give you information that you can actually take to authors or other new people in your industry and be like, "Hey, let's talk about this." I mean, the one that you and I sat in on, the second one after the networking where they were talking about Bookstat,
Hmm.
I made a video about that, but I thought that was so important for indie authors to have the knowledge that they do count and their audiobook sales are actually huge and that everything is still increasing. Um, and then, the mixers. It's an open
Yep.
bar on a Sunday before I'm just glad I didn't have to read for the producers the next day.
I know, right? And it was incredibly loud too. So we were both kind of lamenting the fact that it was putting 700 people in a room. We were all kind of commenting how the acoustics just were not right,
Mm.
especially for us audiobook narrators that like to save our vocal cords. But I think overall, just I mean, I would recommend APAC to really anybody at any point in their audiobook career because it is a place where narrators as well as producers are come together. And it's really the only place that I know of that you really get that synergy of being able to bump into a casting director from Podium or Tantor or Blackstone or any of the large production companies or publishing companies. Um, that you just don't get that really anywhere else. And they do have a lot of opportunities for people to do what we call speed dating, which or meet the producers, where you do get to sit down with producers and read for them very, very quickly and very short little segments. But those are really great opportunities for people. And I know I went through speed dating after the last one in 2019, and it was a great experience. And I connected with producers that I still work with today. So it there we sometimes can get overwhelmed with conferences, and I know they cost money to go to and attend. But I think in the audiobook world, this is the conference to go to. There's no question about it.
And I was lucky enough to do the speed dating on the 17th of March because 'cause they're making it virtual now. So
Hmm.
it was just like 2 to 3 minutes in front of a wall of people that you can't see, and then you get the list afterwards of who was there to reach out to. So yeah, it was really cool to, like, the people who, like, then responded to my follow-up email. I got to meet quite a few of them at APAC and just kind of further cement that relationship and just see who they are in real life because so often we have this idea, like, this person's a producer and it's this, like, pedestal entity, and it's like, "No, they're actually just people, and they'll sit there and talk to you about their dogs." Like,
Exactly. Well, I think we talked about that at the one of the sessions you and I were both in,
"Oh,
where I
right.
think it was
The goat, the
Eric
goats and
from
chickens."
yes, Eric Black, I think from Dreamscape, and he was making the comment that people come up to me and they're like, don't come up to me and say, "Hi, I'm an audiobook narrator and I really want to work with you." Like he's like, I get that all day long.
Mhm.
So come up and tell me something else. Like talk to me about something. I'm actually a human being and I have interests outside of audiobooks. And we were joking about the fact that, like Ruthie was saying, she was like, that's your friend who you drove up with. She's
Mhm.
like, I have chickens and like I want to talk about chickens. And so it's true, we're all people, we're all human beings, and we have to make sure that it's not just stick a business card in somebody's face going, "Hey, hire me," because that's not usually how it works.
Yeah, kind of feel a little headhunty that way.
A little bit, a little bit, a little bit. But again, I don't know that you get an experience like that where you do get to interact with producers and publishing companies to the extent that you can at APAC. So and plus just meeting new people and rekindling old friendships was just so much fun. It was wonderful. So if you're interested in audiobooks, check out the Audiobook Publishers Association, and consider going to their conference. And also, there's the Professional Audiobook Narrators Association, which is PANA, and they were there. They had a table there, but that's another organization that was created kind of as a, not well, it was created specifically for the audiobook narrators, because the Audiobook Publishers Association is really designed specifically for publishers. This PANA is designed specifically for narrators, and a really good organization as well.
And they host like online socials and such as well, where you can meet other people who are narrators as well. And that was something they said at one of the casting tables, is like, get to know your colleagues who aren't producers, because you never know where they will be. And if you establish a friendship also, then they can recommend you. If perhaps they can't fit something into their schedule, they can be like, oh, but I know Mike, and Mike could do this great.
Right.
So like, it's not just about, it's the whole community is in fact a community who talk to each other.
Oh yeah, I've said this many times on this podcast that the networking and developing authentic relationships with your colleagues, emphasis on authentic, is one of the absolute best things that you can do, not only in the audiobook industry, but just in the voiceover industry in general, because the vast majority of any work that I've gotten has been the result of somebody else from the industry referring me or recommending me. So networking is right at the very top of my list of things that you should do to get yourself out there in the industry. No question about it.
Absolutely.
So, Paige, we are coming up on the incredibly stressful part of our podcast interview, which is the end, where we have to ask you to give a single piece of advice, if you can only give one, to an aspiring audiobook narrator. What would that piece of advice be?
You warned me about this, and it's still
I
hard.
did. I know.
I had like a list of 10. I'm like,
I've had people do 1 and 1A, so you might be able to squeeze 2 in there if you
okay.
if you can work that out.
Right. I'm gonna try and like consolidate this. Single piece of advice: decide what you want this career or job to be for you. Because it doesn't have to be a career. It doesn't have to be a job. It can just be something you do on the side. It can be a hobby. But if you want to make it a career, a job, then realize that it is all about the hustle. It's not easy, and the amount of work you put in is generally reflected in the amount of work that you get. If you don't work towards it, you're not going to get anything because, like we said earlier, competition is huge. So if you don't put the work towards like training necessarily, and I mean, I could just mean mic technique. It doesn't even have to be acting technique necessarily, or learning the software, or getting the correct space set up, which doesn't have to be expensive. But just doing your research into that. You can't just speak into your phone and record in the bathroom. Like, don't do that. But yeah, just decide what you want this to be to you. If you want it to be a career, go for it. If you want it to be a hobby, go for it. That's fine. They're both fine. They're both viable. They're both accepted.
That's a great piece of advice, because that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that people have, is that they see things like on TikTok where they tell you can make $1,000 an hour sitting in a chair talking into a microphone, and people get lured into the sense that this is a get rich quick industry, and it just isn't. And it can be you can do very well in this industry, but you absolutely, I don't think there's anybody that I've spoken to in my 15 years of doing this that was an overnight success, that everybody had to put the time in to hone their craft, to understand the tech side of it, to make sure that they understand that it's a business and to treat it as such, and to be determined that there are going to be setbacks. It's not just going to happen and fall from the sky for you. But I think that's true in any endeavor that you really want to pursue. You've got to make sure that it's something that you really want to do. And then are you really going to be committed to doing all the things you need to do, and not make a lot of money in the beginning to get yourself in a position where you can make money at it, if that is your goal. And the nice thing about VO in general and audiobooks in particular is that, like you said, it can be anything that you want it to be. I've been through every facet of this industry in terms of, hobby to side hustle to part-time gig to full-time gig. So I've seen it all. And at every step along the way, you got to keep hustling.
I mean, it's a gig. It's gig work at this
Yep.
point. It's everyone's competing. It's a gig. So if you don't get it, that's fine. If you do get it, that's great.
I think it was Andy Art that said in the last APAC I attended, she said, don't fear the white space. And I thought that was really good advice for audiobook narrators. She said most audiobook narrators look at their calendar and they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, guilty. I'm doing that right now.
I've got this week coming up where I don't have any book. And what am I going to do? And panic sets in. And we've all been there. And she's like, don't fear the white space. She goes, when you have that downtime, embrace it. Look at it as a way to take a mental health break, take a physical break, network, work on your website, update your resume, update your demos, do something, that you wouldn't be doing if you were narrating. But she admitted that it's easier said than done. But I thought it was really good advice for me because back in 2019, I was relatively at the beginning stage of really ramping up into doing audiobook on a full-time basis. And I took it to heart, and she was right. Don't fear the white space.
I needed to hear that because I just had an author cancel a duet that I was supposed to do. And by duet, I mean 2 books. So like 16 hours of, that coveted union rate. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, okay, I'll find something else. But, I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe I just can shift my calendar because I had, like, a lot of back end stuff, so I'm like, maybe I can just shift it,
Yep.
and it'll be fine, or something else can randomly come up, You never know what will show up in your inbox.
Exactly. That is exactly what has happened to me many, many times where, I get up on Monday and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen this week, but something inevitably does, whether it's voice related or whether it's audiobook related or, other types of VO work that I do. Inevitably something pops into your inbox. And again, I think that's part of the hustle. That's part of making sure that you're out there networking, making sure that you're doing all those things on the back end that you need to do to be competitive in the industry.
I like to just audition for stuff that I may or may not be right for, but it hones my skills. It's fun to do, like, new reads. I'll go and look for stuff where they specifically only want a male voice and just do it because, like, they might not cast me, but what's it hurting me? It's not.
No,
So,
it's all practice.
mhm.
It's all practice. Well, this has been a ton of fun. I'm glad we kind of had that full closure moment where
Yeah.
you kind of thought about audiobooks after listening to the podcast, and now you get to be a guest on my podcast, which is wonderful.
I
Awesome.
should go back through my history and just message you and be like, "This is the first date I ever listened to you, Mike," and we'll see how it lines up, if it's, like,
Yes.
exactly 2 years or something.
Yes, that would be cool. That would be really cool. But before we do wrap up, where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can find me my website is www.pagevoice.com. Paige Voice is also my TikTok handle, and that is the social media I am mostly on. I am on Instagram and Facebook as Paige Reisenfeld VO because apparently somebody else already claimed Paige Voice, and I'm very upset by that.
Who would do that to
Um,
you?
I know, it's very rude. And I'm also going to a few like book cons this year. I'll be at Imaginarium in May and SaskCon in July in Norfolk. Imaginarium's in DC, and then Getting Witchy with It in Salem. And if anyone's seen my logo, I have an orange hat, and I will be wearing that at all 3 cons.
And you wore it at APAC.
I did indeed.
I saw you in it. And also Paige is Paige. So it's
Yep.
Paige voice.com. So want to make sure people know that. And this has been absolutely wonderful. I'm glad you came on, and I really appreciate you sharing not only your journey with my listeners, but also everything that's been going on in your audiobook world. And I wish you continued success on your journey.
I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me ramble and inviting me on to do so.
That was my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Mike Lenz VO podcast. Head on over to MikeLenzVOpodcast.com for links and recaps of each show. Catch you next time on the Mike Lenz VO podcast.